are you guys doing, and welcome back into the channel. So let's not waste any time. From the very first opening scene, we are given a glimpse into the type of conditioning Avery Sunderland would eventually cling to in his adult years. Avery is disposing of Gordon's body in the present day, and in doing so is reminded of how he was commanded to kill the gator that his father had secured. The one cool thing that I noticed about this series is that even though the darkness is absolute in its purpose, human beings, however, are filled with all sorts of gray areas mixed in with the light and the dark. As usual for a small town during a widespread outbreak and viral deaths, two men take it upon themselves to find some cypress wood in the swamp at night, while it's very dark.
What the hell? Hey, stop!
And of course, a body falls from the tree and infects one of the men. But after the men leave, Swamp Thing finds the long dead body and examines it in its own way, letting us know
something wicked this way comes.
The very next day, one of the men from the last scene shows up for work at Delroy's. It isn't long before the infection kicks in, causing lifelike and visceral hallucinations. Since he sees a snake wrapped around his arm, it's only right that he should take a knife to try to remove it, right? And if that doesn't work, the garbage disposal should do the trick.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
But we know how this goes. While the young man was fighting and preoccupied with his delusion, he scratches Liz's father, passing on the supernatural infection. We join Abby as she goes into the swamp to find Alec Holland in order to help him. And just before she finds him, the plant life comes alive, like it did in the beginning of the pilot episode. But this time, it's under the control of Alec Holland. Abby asks Alec, now the Swamp Thing, for a sample of his body to examine. He does so, and upon returning to the lab, Abby is unsure what to make of his condition. In what I believe to be a breakdown in judgment, she asks Dr. Jason Woodrew's professional opinion on what he sees. Now yes, he is an expert in his field, but still, because it is here that Dr. Woodrew becomes privy to knowledge of Alec Holland's true nature. This plants the seeds for quite a brilliant theory that comes into play later down the road. Abby runs into Daniel, and the two have an interesting exchange, and if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about, as well as Avery and Maria, who show up at the hospital and end up taking Susie home under their care. We then find Sheriff Lucilia at Delroy's. Liz and her father tell Lucilia about the young man seeing a snake, as well as what happened with the disposal. Now Abby shows up just after they are questioned, and while Liz fills her in on what happened, Pops begins his episode. Now during him acting out, as a result of some heightened childhood memory, he scratches Lucilia on the neck. Now once this happened, this episode's premise kind of reminded me of the 1998 movie Fallen, starring Denzel Washington. Just let me know what you think. Later in the hospital, Pop tells Abby of the experience and how a break-in that took his mother's life was responsible for his actions. He also tells Abby the name of the place the young man visited the night before in OG Forks, sending Abby on her next mission. There, she finds the chainsaw as well as the body. Swamp Thing then finds her and tells her about the darkness and that it needs to return to the swamp. Shortly afterwards, Abby links up with Liz, who has found some information found in an old newspaper print that sheds light on their Legion situation. Turns out there was a similar situation that happened in Moray's past. That man took himself away not to infect anyone else, and it's the same one that ended up in the tree. Daniel is approached by Madame Xanadu and tells him of the state of Moray and that whatever is going on with his future is not just affecting his, but the entire town of Moray as well. Downstairs at the get-together, Maria and Avery talk more about adopting Susie. Just as Lucilia's episode starts, she envisions Matt being stabbed and pulls her gun out, shaking it at the entire crowd. Abby, knowing full well what is going on, tries to calm Lucilia down and gets scratched in the process, and quickly leaves as to not infect anyone else. While in the swamp, Abby begins her episode, and it is clear from her fear hallucination that her past is quite shrouded in mystery and has potential for some compelling development moving forward. Swamp Thing finds her and draws the darkness infection into himself, and then returns it to the body, which the swamp swallows up. After the party, it seems that Avery is up to his old usual tricks, and that his adoption of Susie is not heartfelt at all. And finally, back in the swamp, Abby tells the Swamp Thing about her darkness vision, leading him to tell her of the darkness and how it's become out of balance due to the mutagen being dropped in the swamp. And this is only the beginning. Well, that just about wraps up this week's review. Make sure you stay tuned in the Content Meta, so we have a lot more content on the way. Don't forget to hit that like and sub button. It really helps out the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and until then,
is on my side.